and I would call it like the call of the soul. Like if there's something in you that is trying to awaken or shift or transform or get back on your path, that call gets louder and louder. And so I think of that when I see people that are, really, really highly productive, but also like not creating space and time for themselves, or not slowing down, or even just really anxious people that just really live up here, or people that are like working themselves to death. My warning, if you will, is like, well, you can choose to slow down or life will slow you down.
Dr. Nicole Dolan, thank you for joining me on the Mindful Movement podcast.
Absolutely. Thank you for having me here.
The first thing that stood out when I was preparing for this is it said you were a depth psychologist, and I don't think I've seen that phrase before. Can you elaborate what you mean by depth psychologist?
Sure. So I can say briefly first, I had a master's degree in depth psychology before I fully think I could answer that question. And I was completing my PhD when I went to my advisor and said, I think I know what depth psychology is now. I think that it's a spiritual psychology, but you guys just don't call it that. So what I would say is depth psychology uses myth, metaphor, dreams as part of the process of healing. And the greatest focus of depth psychology versus something like, say, CBT is we're paying attention to the unconscious, and what's in my own language is what's in the energetic field. So when I'm sitting with someone, I'm paying attention to everything that they're telling me about their story. I feel like their story is incredibly meaningful and valuable as to where they are in the world, but also who they are. And I'm also paying attention to things like, adverse experiences, trauma, etc., as catalysts for growth, transformation. A lot of ancient mythologies and theories out there will speak about this, right? Like the gold is in the wound. So we're very focused in that way, where the question, instead of how do we alleviate these symptoms as quickly as possible, is what are these symptoms sharing with us? And specifically, what does the soul want? So that's probably the best explanation I can give of depth psychology at this point. But for me, where it's brought me in the world with my work, or even as clinical director, I've trained a lot of therapists to do therapy. I've really shared with them that having this background and education and experience really opened me up intuitively. Like it really taught me to sit with somebody and pay attention to their dreams, symbols that, or imagery, or even just thoughts. Maybe a song comes into my head while I'm sitting with somebody. I'm aware of how somebody feels because I often feel it in my own body. So really paying attention to intuitive information, but also honoring the clinical too.
Okay. So you mentioned dreams. I don't think we've discussed dreams much on this podcast. Do they talk about dreams in like formal training? I mean, you have some degrees and such that I assume came from some kind of higher institution. Like, is that a topic in the...
Yeah. So I'm trained at a place called Pacifica Graduate Institute. And they do certainly bring dream work into education. For a long time, for me, it's been a process of integration. So when I was learning it, like from a book and from people speaking, it didn't click for me right away. But I would say I've been out of grad school for over 10 years and over 15 years. And over time, it's something that started to really integrate for me. And the more that I paid attention to my dreams, the more I saw that there's things that we process in that space. So depth psychology might focus more on like the symbol or imagery or like archetypes that are coming in the dreams. And I don't over identify as depth psychologist. So what I want to say is, like, for me, I might not necessarily go down that path, but a Jungian analyst will. But for me, it's just, I started taking them as very meaningful. And the more that I did, the more I experienced visitations from loved ones that have passed, or I've had healing experiences in my dreams where I've been able to, almost like an EMDR experience, where I've been able to actually like witness, things that I've experienced in a different way, and hold them in a different light. So, not an easy thing to put language to, but it's important. I mean, we sleep however many years of our life, right? So it's important to pay attention to that part of our life. And Jungian psychology would say that that is potentially, that is the life. Like it's the
Wow.
unconscious
Okay.
world.
Do you think dreams are always relevant or significant? Like, does every dream emerge for a reason?
I don't know if I could answer that specifically. Like, do I think so? I mean, I've been tracking my dreams long enough that, I mean, I feel like my dreams are pretty significant, but I also have very real life experience dreams. So I will see things in my dreams that are giving me information about what's really happening in the world or in life, or maybe in a loved one's life. So I think it really depends. I think if you're having more like, those beautiful, like fantasy, incredible dreams where you're swimming with the whales or something, like then I would say like turn towards, the archetypal language for that. Like, okay, well, what does the whale represent? And potentially, what is that about where you are on your path of transformation? I think elemental dreams are really interesting when you have dreams about fire, or even like shit, honestly. Like it's often about transformation. Like you're going into, maybe you're kind of burning down or need to burn down what the current life or structure or relationship is that you're in order to come into a transformation cycle. If you're in water, water that's really rough, it's probably a more difficult phase of your transformation. If you're floating in crystal blue water, maybe you're in a more peaceful place. So I think there's a lot that is represented in that space. I won't say that I specialize in dream work or spend a ton of time in it with clients, but when you ask the question about depth psychology specifically, like those who practice it like to a T, they definitely are doing more of that dream work.
That's interesting.
Yeah.
Because it sounds like you work with people with a purpose. There's a intention around healing. And that's why they're showing up. And I guess I've never really considered the role that dream analysis would play if you were trying to heal from something that you felt had, I don't know, physical symptoms.
Yeah, and it depends. I mean, I can give you an example. I remember, kind of in my own process of leaning into it, because I'm also, I can be a skeptic myself. And so, like I said, a lot of this stuff didn't click for me right away. But I
I'm not a
remember,
skeptic. I'm almost
well,
jealous. I feel
I'm
like
saying,
I feel like I don't dream as much as I want to, and I surely don't remember or make sense of any of it when I
yeah,
do.
yeah. Well, I'm just saying myself, not
Gotcha.
you, but like I can be skeptical. Like I had some issues when I first started studying depth psychology because I had such an ego. I had come from, a patriarchal world where I was like, no, I need to be like a clinician in the world. I need to know what to like tell people how to alleviate their symptoms with my white coat on, and I can't talk to people about dreams or mythology. Are you kidding me? So it took me a long time to get on board, is all I'm saying for myself. But, then the ego dissolves and then you become the true self. So, but what I want to say is a good example of like when I feel like what came through when you asked that is I was processing trauma at one point. I was having really intense dreams, whether they were like snakes trying to eat me or people chasing me or whatever. They were violent, scary dreams. And eventually somebody started to show up in them, like not the same figure each time, but like there was always some form of safety in the dream. So whether that was like somebody that showed up and like helped me, or somebody that was there witnessing and I didn't feel alone anymore. And it could have been like a real person or even just like another figure, but I knew I had a felt sense in the dreams, and the dreams started transitioning from that place. They started transitioning from this really, scary landscape to a place where I had support. And when I was processing that with a therapist, they had shared with me, and I'd learned, through my training too, it's like, okay, so first off, it can be having outside support. It can be having a therapist, a mentor that's witnessing, and you're starting to feel that support in the unconscious. It's starting to actually hold. And it can also be you starting to be able to hold yourself, right? And not just in scary moments, but also in regulation, right? Like a big part of our healing often is being able to hold ourselves, not projecting it onto someone else, like a partner, right, to do that work. So I feel like that's a good example when it comes to healing, where I started to see that actually show up in dream work.
Well, that's it. That's interesting. Um, I feel like I wish I had like a spreadsheet of all my dreams over the years, that I could look and kind of analyze what was going on when, but I've never tried to track. I guess when to track, you really have to wake up and have a book there and write it down because
Yes.
they seem so intense and yet so fleeting.
Yeah.
Like they
Yeah.
just gone. And there's been many times where I know like I know that I'm dreaming and I wake up and I know that I was just dreaming and I'm trying to grab it and trying to put words to what I was experiencing so I could be like, what just happened? And it's like already gone.
Yeah. There's some tricks to it that I've read about over the years. Just, different things like kinesthetic wise, like you can put yourself in the same position you were in when you were sleeping, maybe. Or this one does ring true for me. Like, make sure if you do want to record your dreams, it's the first thing you do. Because doing it on, like, if you start repetitively doing it, you will start to recall them more for a little longer. So at first
Really?
you might just get, yeah, you might just get like a blip the first time, but if you continue to do that, you'll start to get a little bit more and a little bit more. And so, and there is like science and research behind like every movement that you make kind of like takes it further and further away. So if you are going to do it, yeah, put a dream journal next to you. And also, honestly, like chat GPT these days, right? Because, or your phone where you can just record, because you can just voice note it. I found that to be the easiest because I don't always have I have 3 children, I don't always have time
Gotcha.
to get up and like write down my dreams, but I can pick up my phone and speak into it really quickly and then come back to it too.
Yeah, it's interesting that you get better at recall as you practice that. It's like with anything. What do you think? So, do you think that dreams are essentially our subconscious providing medicine? Like, and calling medicine like what helps you live? Like, do you feel like it is the subconscious that knows what you need on some level, the inner wisdom, trying to communicate to the conscious part of you?
You're asking some big questions and I can appreciate it. I don't have all the answers, but I will guess. I think that there is an unconscious, I do trust that we have an unconscious life. And so many of us, that are working towards mindfulness, consciousness, we're being intentional about waking that up and hopefully learning to integrate, the unconscious into the conscious. And that's what I would call the work that I do with people is it's really like, let's make what's unconscious conscious. So I think that dreams can be a vehicle for that, certainly. I personally think that you can have, spiritual guidance through dreams. If you believe that you have spirit guides or whatever resonates for you, a guardian angel or whatnot. So I think that it's a very spiritual landscape. I think that dreams come to us to wake us up sometimes. And what's really interesting, and I haven't gotten this far into it, like I said, but there are people that are, especially in the Jungian world, that are very, very into dream work. And they would tell you that you start to almost kind of see like not a difference between dream life and waking life and like which one's real, right? Like, so it's, I think you can go really far with it. I haven't taken it that far, but I love using it as a way to pay attention to the unseen and the unconscious and what maybe is coming through our dreams that we are learning or that can be healing.
Right. Hey, who's to say what's real? I mean, they happen. They
They do.
are an experience that did happen. I don't know if there's matter or measurable energy that is associated with them, but who's if it happened, it's hard to say it's not real. I mean, I've heard people talk about psychedelics, and I've experienced some psychedelics over my life, and when you're under the influence, things feel pretty real, even though they could feel really different. And many people talk the idea that it feels more real. And who's to say that's not more real, and that just we create reality as the normies experience it as we think, most of the time, because that's what we need to do to help us survive, life in the meat suit that we're in and navigating whatever, daily activities we have. And maybe we're just
Absolutely.
creating that so that because we have to survive. And who's to say one's more or less of the other?
Right. Yeah.
Freaky.
Yeah.
So
Freaky.
you just use dreams, I guess, as like one modality and myth. I think you mentioned. What are some of the other tools? I think when I was looking at your bio, I saw like IFS and maybe EMDR. Like there were a bunch of things. Do you like pull from a lot of modalities when you're working with someone to just kind of grab the tool out of the kit that you think is most relevant for the moment?
Absolutely. Yeah. And like I shared, I train therapists. I'm stepping out of that role a little bit. Um, so I've learned that it really depends on, who you're working with as to what it is that they resonate with as far as tools. But then also, like, for me, it's like I have a wealth of background and experience. And so I do have a toolbox back here that it depends on the client and where they're at as to what I might bring forth into that space. So something like IFS, internal family systems. I think, a lot of people used to do, well, I don't want to say used to, but inner child work used to be like the big thing where people would, go in and work with the inner child of that experience, whatever it was, when you were younger. And IFS is a little bit, I mean, I have to be careful. There's people that are going to be like, it's way different than that. So it is. It is a lot different than that, but where I find that it might be really useful is like working with a part of self, let's say, instead of just an inner child. Like maybe there's an inner teenager, or maybe there's a protector. We all have a protector, or many. So I think to answer your question as simply as I can, it's really just paying attention to what somebody needs. And like I said, I am very intuitive. I think that we all are, but I'm somebody who's really tapped into it, and that's been part of my developing career, is I actually wanted to really develop that because it makes this work so much more profound. So for me, it's like, do I know what to use in the moment because I just know, right? Like I can see. I was explaining to my trainees the other day. I said, I was sitting with this woman who she deals with some chronic disease stuff, and we were talking about using some IFS with her, and that being helpful to work with this belief, this part that is yes sick, but also really identifies that way. And I was like, the crazy thing is, as soon as I saw her, I actually saw her like with my eyes in a wheelchair. She's not really in a wheelchair, but like that's what I saw when I first saw her. And so my intuition is a really big part of what I do because it gives me so much information so much faster than if I was sitting with somebody for, 6 months before I figured out that this person has over identified with that wounded part of self or something like that. So
So when you say you saw them in a wheelchair, what did that tell you? That you saw them as like a victim? I don't.
potentially, like I saw that. Well, I actually thought when I first saw this person that they were in a wheelchair. That's just what I saw. So once the conversation started and we started getting into, tracking energetic patterns and history and things that were coming into the room, I knew, I was like, oh, okay, like this person's, and it's not like she looked like she was in the wheelchair the whole time. It was just an instant, kind of third eye moment. So it just all started clicking. But yes, like it let me know that this person, since she's not really in a wheelchair, it was just information for me. I didn't fully judge it at first, but it just was like, oh, okay, I was meant to see that, And so when it started unfolding that like that's how she sees herself in the world, and that's a way that she's moving through the world and really communicating to others too, and living through that lens, which is also a wild depth psychology idea in ways too, right? Or like you're talking about like illusion, right? That you could tell somebody like, hey, maybe we can help you with your chronic illness through healing the psyche.
How do you know in that case that you're not like projecting some of your issues you know what I mean?
Yeah, totally fair. Totally fair. So we have something called countertransference. I don't know if you've heard that term, but in therapy we have a term called countertransference, and it's a term that basically means take care of your own shit, basically. So what it means is like when you're sitting with a client and you have something coming up in you that is activating something in you, your job as a therapist, clinician, mentor, anything really, is to then go take that to your inner work. Like go work on that in yourself. And I am actually not a huge fan of countertransference. I actually appreciate more the idea of parallel processing, and also holding that like I'm not just the therapist and you're not just the client. Like I'm Nicole and you're Les, right? And bringing us into that space is what creates what's happening between us. So it's I trust also what's happening in the energetic field or the intersubjective field or whatever you want to call it. So certainly could it be like my own stuff, but I've done it long enough to know what my intuition is telling me, but also I know when I'm in countertransference or when it's like say something that's not useful. I can actually feel the energetic difference. I can feel
Gotcha.
the difference between me sharing something that's like coming through for you and useful and needs to be here versus something that is mine.
Yeah, that's interesting, having to decipher that in real time, because I would assume it's very common because people are people and they're always peopling, and being a people is really hard, and there's a lot of weird shit that comes with it.
Yeah, yeah. Well, and the truth is, and it's kind of sad that there are a lot of, I don't know. I used to say it in my ego days. It's like there's a lot of bad therapists out there, and I'm so great, but I've changed a lot in 20 years. But it's more, there are a lot of therapists out there that haven't done deeper inner work. And one thing that I do love about Jungian psychology is the belief and trust that like you can only take somebody as far as you've been. And I teach that, and people that work with me, they see that. And I choose to work with people that go to schools that make you have your own therapists. So you're on the other side of the couch, right? You are the client and you have that experience. So they're in their own therapy. And then also go to schools that really encourage the psychoactive process of becoming a clinician. Because if you're just sitting in a place where you feel like I'm here to help others and there's nothing to look at in myself, then, this field will kick your ass. Like you will burn out. I mean, unless you're fully narcissistic or something.
Really, really cold hearted, and it just don't pick up anyone else's vibes.
Yeah. 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 So doing your work is, I mean, it's, I believe, the most important thing that you can possibly do before you try to help someone with their work. Yeah.
And even though that's probably a continuing process, it doesn't mean you can't start. It's not like you finish yourself and now you're ready to work with someone else, because that's not real.
Totally. We are all evolving beings, right? And yeah, and it's exciting sometimes to see when, I like I love the work. I don't do a lot of one-on-one work at this point. I'm often involved in the beginning of the work because I'm really good at seeing in the beginning. We've been sharing. I'm very intuitive, right? So I can sit with somebody for an hour, hour and a half, and I have a lot of information as to where they need to go and what's going to be the most supportive for them. And then I'm very resourced, and so I can bring in supports for them. I can create, one-on-one care, or if it's a family, we have support for the children, whatever it is that we need. And so I'm not doing a lot of the one-on-one therapy anymore. And I kind of forgot what I was going to say before that, so I'll just share that and see if it comes back to me.
Okay. So you mentioned you were working with somebody with like chronic illnesses. How much do you think when someone has some kind of chronic situation, which seems to be just super common in society now, and it seems like the traditional like Western allopathic care is not well equipped to be very successful with it. Like they don't ask the right questions, so none of their answers seem to be the right answers. And how much of those though do you think there is a like an underlying emotional, psychological, something going on with the psyche that really is at the root of whatever the physical manifestation of their symptoms and complaints are?
Yeah. Well, how deep do we go? I want to say 100%. But I hold mental health so differently than others. And so when I say that, I might be talking about my own beliefs. I don't push this on people, but if you resonate, awesome. But my own beliefs are like, I'd be curious about even like past life stuff or soul contract, or what did you want to potentially experience in this life? Or often there's there's meaning and there's medicine in the things that we go through that are really difficult too. So, you see often some of the most profound naturopathic healers out there have been through things like Lyme disease, where they've been in bed for years of their lives. One is because they're extraordinarily sensitive people, and that's what makes them have the capacity to do what they do and do so well. But the other is kind of like the shamanic belief, that the shaman goes through a period of their own, darkness, underworld journey before they're appointed into that medicine man or woman role. What's coming through right now is like, so I hold things so differently. And I guess like an example I can give you is like, I've worked with, teenagers or young college students that have been really depressed, and, other people have not been able to support or help. Often people would come to us and say like, okay, we've tried everything else. Now we're willing to like lean in this other way, or can you help? And in these cases, I often, whether I was the direct clinician or I was training, I would say, have you tried, giving them a Myers-Briggs test, like a personality test? And if you don't know, for those listening, if they don't know what it is, the simplistic version of it, you can go online. It's like 16personalities.com, 16personalities.com. And for, there's a more in-depth test, but I find that you come up with the same information either way, but that might just be me. But either way, I said, have you tried giving him, this test? Or have you given him a book like The Celestian Prophecy, or, The Alchemist? Or, and the intention and the reason behind that is because often when you have, and I'm not going to say always, but often when you have somebody with a very complex life of suffering, which is psychological, but often manifests in their body, right, too. So it's often physiological too. You have a medicine woman, you have a medicine man, you have somebody who came here to heal, support, advocate others for others. And so if you can if you can spark that in them, not to project onto them and say like they need to go out and do this, but if I trust that, if I trust that their soul chose something bigger in this life, then I can use tools like that to start to kind of plant a seed and wake something up. Because when that comes on board, when that comes alive in them, they start to wake up again. They start to feel alive again. And that's way different than taking them somewhere and giving them, Zoloft to get rid of depression, or, you know what I mean? So I really, really hold the experience of the human life as very, very much a spiritual journey. There's deep meaning in all things. And so how can I help people, put together their own story, their own meaning, and learn to thrive through like their own experience as a messenger of like who they are too.
Yeah, there's a lot there. Some of that resonates. I remember getting sick. I got Lyme disease. You alluded to Lyme a moment ago, and it was a really rough time for a while.
Wow.
I remember there's a lot that came out of it, but I'm pretty sure I know like where I was when I got bit by a tick, and I was in a really beautiful place next to the property I live in. There's like this meadow that nobody uses, so it's like this extra land I have. It's like this special nook that I'm like one of the few people that uses. It's a special place to me.
Yeah.
And I was out there doing like some exercise in the sun and barefoot, and like I like lay down on the grass after a workout, and I was just like loving it. And then like later that week I had a freaking bullseye on me and I was in rough shape, and it went on this crazy trajectory for years.
Yeah.
And for a while I was terrified to like, and I'm someone that like goes out barefoot all the time in the grass. Like I go out in the woods barefoot in the backyard. I think it's like an important part of who I am, like that I want to be able to do that. And for a while, like I was scared. I was scared of the grass in my backyard. Like I would walk to the edge of the patio and I just wouldn't, like I was hurting. And then after, I don't know, a couple years, like I could go back to that area and like kind of, kneel and kiss the ground
Yeah.
with gratitude for like all the lessons I got from getting Lyme. And, and now I have no fear. Like I've pulled so many ticks off me since then. And I don't even I remember initially, like the first time I pulled a tick off and didn't freak out, like my wife was like surprised, like, why aren't you freaking out? And
Yeah.
now like I go out and I go for a hike in the woods and I come and I do a quick check on my legs. And be like, no big deal. And if I find one, no big deal. And I just pick it off and flick it, and like I'm not gonna get sick over it.
Hmm.
I don't know. That came to mind when you were saying like it's like there's part of your path, like things, I don't know, happen for a reason. Like since then, I've helped a lot of people. Like I doubt I would have started the podcast. I doubt I would have interviewed, a couple hundred people where people could come along for the ride and pick up maybe a gem here and there that helps them make their life better, whatever. I don't think any of that would have happened if I didn't get bit by that tick.
Yeah. Yeah. I love that you're sharing that on so many levels. So, thank you for sharing your story. And one of the levels too is I'm like, see, we're tapping into the unconscious now, right? Like my field is with your field, and that's what's coming through in our conversation. And that's what I love about this work is you have two open people, and the things that we talk about are going to not only resonate, but we'll start to kind of bring each other's, stories or things through. So I love what you're sharing. And also, all the lessons, right? Everything that came through that experience. And I don't know much about Lyme disease. And I'm going to be really careful saying this, but I don't know if it's, okay, what I want to say is, I think you can get it other ways too, right? Or is that, Do you know?
Well, I think you probably can. I do think that you can have it dormant in you for a long time, and
Yeah.
then when
Yeah.
you have a stress and there's some kind of acute immune compromise situation, whether it's from grief or losing your job or divorce or whatever, emotional stuff, it can blow up. I think there's a lot of microorganisms in our body
Yeah.
that are fine until there's a reason for them to make it not fine.
Right. Right. Okay. So yeah, and I'm not even going to try and speak to it. I'm not a medical doctor, but what's fascinating to me about Lyme is like we were saying, like those who have been through it, any of the ones that I have either worked with or known in my professional career, there is such a spiritual journey that comes through it for some reason. And so I'm careful and mindful to say that, but it's a really interesting one for me. And yet it's also a really hard one for people. Like anyone who's been through it, it's been really hard. So yeah, so
Yeah, it's hard.
it's interesting.
And it could be maddening. Like I don't know what's true because it's hard to figure out what's true, but I've heard people talk about, yeah, that was a bioweapon made by our military that got unleashed. And it's like, is that true? Because if it is, man, that's so maddening. But
Yeah,
I don't know
yeah,
if it is, but I've heard people talk about it and provide some evidence. And, after what we went through with COVID for the last 5 years, whatever, it's like, man, I wouldn't put it past them. I don't know. Like they make
right.
weapons, buy weapons all the time. It sounds like they have a big history of it. And then I think of like, I think there's like 300,000 new cases of Lyme a year. It's like
Yeah,
staggering number.
yeah, yeah,
And it's like, is that humans? Is that like, how sick are we that we, it's hard enough to be healthy when, I don't know, in this world, the way we like poison the air and the water and the food supply and all,
yeah,
it's like, it's freaking hard enough. And like, you're just going to gamble with these critters in a way that like, you have no idea what kind of price could be paid if it goes wrong. Like, you can't calculate the risk reward in that scenario. And I don't know. I hope it's not true, but I don't know. I don't know what to believe these days.
yeah. And I think that that's a time that we are in. I had a client call it the Cartesian crisis. I think therefore I am, meaning like that's the only thing that's true. That's the only thing I know, or is it I think I therefore I am? Either way, it's just the only thing I know is that I exist. Like that's it. That's all I know. And maybe I know that. And so yeah, we are in a time where, it's I think we want to be you want to be balanced with it, right? You don't want to say like question everything, but at the same time like be mindful, make decisions, right? Think about, what's in your food and unfortunately your water and I mean don't even get me started. I yeah, we are in a time where we really have to pay attention to and advocate for ourselves. Like the wisdom doesn't exist outside of ourselves. We can have guides, mentors, people show up and lead us along the way, thank God. And I think that that's so important. But it's also important to realize that like we need to come home to ourselves. Like there's
Yeah.
a lot of answers in here that for so many years we believed, existed out there.
Yeah. Being your own advocate is so important when you're trying to heal from something. I mean, first of all, you're always going to be your best healer. You know, the inner wisdom in your body. Ultimately, if you do heal from anything, it was you that did it. You might have got help and tools, and maybe there were medicines involved, and could be pharmaceuticals or coaches or whatever. But ultimately, like your body did the thing, and give it credit, like and know that. And it's always trying to do that. A lot of it is like we have to get out of the way and allow it to do that and listen to it, with our intuition and such. But yeah, like when I got sick, if I wasn't an advocate for myself, there's no way I would have. If I didn't like wail away on podcasts and YouTube videos to figure out how other people healed from stuff, like the doctors in the white coats had nothing for me.
Right.
Like they had literally like zero tools in the toolkit.
Yeah. some of them don't even like believe in it or something, which is a very odd thing. It's like, what do you mean? It's right here.
Yeah. Well,
Yeah.
I guess I was lucky enough that I had the big giant bullseye rash on the back of my leg, and I felt sick before I knew it was there. I was getting massage, and I felt sick for like days, and the therapist was like, "What happened to the back of your leg?" And I was like, "No." She's like, "You have a big bruise," and like right then I was like, "Is it look like a bullseye?" And she paused and she said, "Yeah." And I popped out and I was like, "Drive me to the clinic. I need some antibiotics." And luckily I had that, so it wasn't hard convincing somebody I needed the antibiotic. But then, of course, it sends you down a path of like, you know, they don't know how to use antibiotics in that. Like, there's not a great protocol for that scenario. There's just a bunch of different opinions, and probably none of them are right. They could all be useful to some extent, but like you're gonna have chances are not everybody, but there's a good chance you're gonna have a road ahead of you that you're gonna have to navigate that they're not gonna be able to help you with. And being your own advocate, and that's hard to if somebody is suffering. That could be a hard thing to convey. Like you have work to do here. When you don't feel good and someone's telling you like there's a lot of runway in front of you and it's all yours. And you could be there to help them, but they have to do the thing.
Yeah, yeah. And when it comes to something like psychotherapy, there's a place where if somebody's in that place where really it's like maybe they don't have it in them to do that work yet, there is like a rest period. I think there is a period where somebody can really hold and witness, and there's so much healing and beauty in that. But I do feel that when it comes to the deeper transformation work, it is work. Like you're saying, it is like, and it doesn't have to happen right away. Like, and even allowing somebody to hold you or witness you might be the work, right? Like that might be something that maybe life slowed you down just so you could begin to learn that, to allow somebody to show up for you. Maybe you weren't able to receive before, or maybe you were always like running around, living up here and not in the body. And, something like Lyme is going to bring you right
It's
back
going
into
to
the
slow you
body.
down.
It's going to
Yeah.
slow you down.
Yeah, it's funny. I used to get acupuncture regularly, and there were times where I thought, and it was very beneficial. And I had this therapist that like she didn't really think it mattered so much like where you put what or whatever. And it dawned on me like how much of this is the fact that you're on a table with needles in you and you can't move. Like you're forced to rest.
Yeah.
For an hour or so, you're going to lay in the middle of the day where you would be like juggling all these things of life and all these other stressors. It's like, no, because you have needles in you.
Yeah.
You're going to be
Yeah.
right here. You can't move. And I'm going to leave the room. So you're going to be here by yourself with your thoughts. And like you say, like that slowing you down and forcing you to rest could be a lot of the healing that a lot of people need just to allow that to unfold by being still. And for some people, I find this really with like successful or I don't, traditionally successful people that are successful that other people would look at them and assume they're successful. Productive people have a lot of trouble being by themselves, being quiet, being still, and could probably benefit from being by themselves, being quiet, being still.
Still, yeah.
And they're
Yeah.
the ones that will fight it.
Yeah. Well, and it's making me think of the hero's journey in ways too, because the hero's journey is that mythic story pattern, right? Where like the hero is being invited to answer the call and, go on the mission. But if you don't answer the call, like, and I would call it like the call of the soul, like if there's something in you that is trying to awaken or shift or transform or get back on your path, that call gets louder and louder. And so I think of that when I see people that are, really, really highly productive, but also like not creating space and time for themselves or not slowing down, or even just really anxious people that just really live up here, or people that are like working themselves to death. My my warning, if you will, is like, well, you can choose to slow down or life will slow you down. Those knocks come, and then progressively they get louder and louder, and sometimes you just get knocked out.
Right. You mentioned something a little bit ago, Nicole, the soul contract. What were you referring to with that?
Yeah, so also a really, giant topic that I am not the person to define, but for myself, I believe that there are things that we have agreed or wanted to accomplish in this lifetime. So I think of those as soul contracts. I think of relationships sometimes as soul contracts. Sometimes you meet someone and you intuitively know, right, that I have something that I'm going to be working out with this person, whether it's in a romantic way or it's a friendship or maybe a business collaboration or even a stranger, whatever it is. So I would really just hold it, if I had to define it, as an agreement that our soul has made before it's come here. And that feels, I don't know, because I was going to say it feels important. Of course, it feels important, but we have free will, and I've kind of had to go in and do my own research around like the idea of like soul contracts and destiny and free will. I actually wrote my dissertation on this and I forgot about it until now. I'm like, oh, I actually wrote about this once, because I was really, really curious about it for a while. I really looked at actually the destiny and healing relationships. Like basically the idea, those of us who do work in therapist, healer, even maybe nurse, whatever it is, capacity, we've experienced the profound experience that our clients, our patients really bring to us what it is that we need to heal in ourselves, just like we bring to them. And so that idea comes up around, soul contracts, just either like relationships and or situations that we have chosen to complete, maybe. I don't even know if I'd say complete, but definitely work on in this life.
Would you feel comfortable touching on some of the things that, or something that you feel your work has like laid in front of you, if you will? Like you've been doing this
Oh,
for a while. Like
yeah.
what's changed over the years where the work has helped you on your own journey as a function of being in the trenches with the clients?
Sure. Yeah. There's a million examples at this point, but the very first one that I can share with you is, so I am a survivor of an assault in my life, and I wrote about this in my book, and so I'm an open book in regards to sharing, and I've done great work around this. But in the beginning of my work as a therapist, I was in my training program. I had, I don't know how long I was there, but some months I was starting to see clients. And I wound up in a situation where, and I wasn't conscious of this, so you'll have to like kind of bear with me as I tell the story, because I'll tell it from the unconscious place where it's like, I don't really know what's going on. I just know I don't feel good. And so I wasn't conscious at the time, but I was seeing these clients, and I started to have, let's say, symptoms, but like it was manifesting in ways that aren't going to make sense at first. I'm sure I probably was like having dreams that I wasn't paying attention to or conscious of or aware of, right? Or maybe there were other ways that I could have gotten this information, but I wasn't getting the information. And so instead, there were things like just things at the office that started to bug me, like I started to feel really irritated like by things, and maybe I wasn't feeling as fluid with like my colleagues as I was before, and maybe I didn't really want to go to work today, or like it just felt kind of yucky, and things started kind of shifting for me a little bit. And eventually my mentor, who is like, he was my clinical supervisor at the time, but he's like just one of my dearest like friends now. Like he just means so much to me. And he did then, to soul contract. We had a connection right away. And he calls me into his office one day and he says, Nicole, I just want to really reflect to you that like this is the person you were when you came in, and this is the person that I see now. And I looked at him and we went back and forth in conversation, and eventually he said, I don't want to do this with you anymore. And I write about this in my book, so I don't want to quote it word for word, but basically I have this experience in my head of like, well, shit, I don't really want to do this with myself anymore. But then I realize, I'm like, oh my gosh, he's going to like fire me, right? Like I'm going to like lose all of my practicum hours, my therapy clients, my job, my clinical grad school placement. I might lose everything that I've done in grad school. Like just the thing just washes over my head, right? Just the overwhelm, the fear, the flooding. I've never really opened up this way before. So I'm like, ugh, like, am I going to like tell him this thing that's been kind of bugging me? No, that has nothing to do with it. What does that have to do with anything? My God, Nicole, shut up. I'm just like dying inside, And eventually I say to him, I'm like, well, there's this thing that I went through that like maybe has something to do with it. But like, I think this happened to me. I know it happened to me. And I just was like, and all of my clients are assault cases right now. Like, and I don't know, something's bugging me, and so, and I just remember like the whole, like, I remember, oh gosh, looking up into his eyes and just being like, okay, I'm still alive. I said it out loud. I'm still here. My body's here. Like, the whole world hasn't burned down. I don't feel like, I'm a little embarrassed because, when we're in denial about trauma like that, we actually feel like we're exaggerating. We feel like maybe it wasn't that big of a deal. Like worse things happen to other people,
All the stories.
So yeah, all the shit that we tell ourselves. So I'm sitting there like, I don't know, like, should I have said that? And, and he just meets me with such grace and such compassion. And he just looks at me. He's like, this has everything to do with this. Like, everything. And then he says, welcome home. Like thank you for like actually really showing up. And so that was the beginning of my journey into the underworld. One of the underworld journeys I've been on. It was the beginning of turning toward my pain as opposed to away from it. It was the beginning of feeling like, maybe this was a big deal. And maybe it has been impacting my life. And maybe I'm not just going to be the therapist who helps other people because I'm fine.
Well, that's a beautiful story. Thanks for sharing that. It sounds like you lucked out with your mentor.
Absolutely. But I also would tell you that I was meant to meet him. Yeah.
So who do you typically work with?
So that is a good question because it's really changed. So my most recent endeavors are actually in the world of autism. And that is because I have a child who's on the autism spectrum, and it has led me on a very full circle journey, going from being a deeply, Eastern philosopher, holistic, all things psychologist, to, okay, well, now I need to understand the neuroscience of what's happening here. I need to understand the sensory profile of the body of what's happening here. It led me on a journey of really needing to understand the science part. I had to come back to the science. And it's not to say one is not better than the other. Let's please just,
Just different tools.
I think of the split that the world is in, and I'm like, oh my gosh, please don't hear this and choose a side. Please don't, right? They are so equally valuable. And it was my own process of integration, my own process of what I believe the world needs to do, of like really seeing, both sides. And so my own process of bringing those two things together. And also when I did that, I finally also got to lean into the spiritual side of autism. And I've become more curious about the nervous system as a psychospiritual field, the idea that maybe these kids are carrying frequencies that don't fit in the body, or the human nervous system doesn't have the capacity to hold without certain levels of training and experience. So I'm saying really loaded things here, which is totally fine. I don't even know. My own brain is in its own philosophy work with that and research. So anything that you're curious about, I'm totally open to talking about, but I don't have all the answers. This is just where we are now. But what it means in my work is I'm moving more into my coaching work, which really works with people in great complexity. So I work with sometimes narcissistic personality disorder or traits like that, because that is a complexity that in typical therapy, you don't really see the supports in place that you need most of the time. I don't want to overgeneralize. I'm working with families with autistic children, or maybe even adults that are curious about their own, neurodivergence, ADHD, etc. But I'm really working with complex systems at this point, which is hilarious, because years ago, like it's like, who would take that on, but me, you know. So I'm really working with complex systems. I would say one of the main, and it's interesting that I share narcissism. It's something that I have a lot of experience with, but also I find it to be one of the greater complexities that you don't see get the support that you need in typical therapy. But I don't want to pigeonhole myself there at all, because
Why is that? Is it just like socially vilified or something? Like,
it's just the level of defense and protection is challenging. I can say that. So it's not impossible, but it's challenging.
you
And
mean
it
like
needs,
someone that is experiencing a lot of narcissism is not going to be open to want help or get help?
I feel like that can be I mean, certainly if you have somebody that's like on the malignant end of the spectrum, then like, yes, they're not usually there for like your support. They might be showing up because a partner's said like, you either do this or it's over. But somebody who, narcissism comes from deep trauma around shame, really. So somebody who, experienced a life of deep emotional neglect, maybe abuse, and was never really like mirrored and seen and created space for them to have a perception of themselves as a good person, even though they go into the world as like, I'm a really good person, and they're really attached to that. It's doing the shadow work is terrifying for them. Terrifying, because the ego is so strong. They've had to build such a false self. We've all created false selves, but they've had to create a really, really, really strong one. So it just takes.
And you think shame underlies a lot of that?
Absolutely.
Really?
Yeah. Yeah, I do.
I've dealt with a lot of shame over the years. I find it's shitty. I mean, it's a low vibe. It's a low frequency to be vibing at.
It actually literally is. You can actually go and read about that. It literally is. Yeah. It's painful, and we all experience shame. It's part of the human experience. And it's the hardest one probably for us to look at in ourselves, right? That's the hardest one for us to hold. So somebody whose like defense mechanisms are like entrenched, like it is challenging for them to look at that in themselves. And so they project their stuff on to everyone around them, right? They deflect, they defend, and then they, reverse the victim and the offender. They do things to keep themselves safe. So I want to be careful, because I don't want to pigeonhole myself as like working with narcissism. It's kind of funny that that came out, because it's like
Nope,
I've seen
that's it.
myself.
That's all you're
I've
getting
seen,
from now on.
I've seen myself attracted, and I'm like, okay, I guess that's what I'm doing. And that's often my answer, is like, I pay attention to what comes to me. But I also really, a lot of my work is working with awakening families with autism. And the reason for that is I think that I think I want to say they have to be awakening or I would call them awakening families, because they're interested in understanding autism differently than our world understands it right now. They're interested in finding within themselves like what's getting activated in their interactions with their children, and this applies to all parenting,
Do you
right?
mean
Like,
what's getting activated within them
yeah.
when
So
they're
so the
trying to
idea of
navigate parenting?
Yeah, so the idea of conscious parenting, which is not my own, Dr. Shefali does a lot of work in this. And what she'll say is that when your child is having an issue and it's triggering for you, that's not about your child, it's about you. So it's really a more conscious parent that is looking at themselves when they're dealing with things like meltdowns, screaming, maybe aggression, etc. And I feel that obviously the journey with the kids that are more highly sensitive or ADHD or somewhere on that autism spectrum, those tantrums are not just tantrums, they're sensory meltdowns. So they're bigger, like they're much bigger, they're much more extreme, more intense, and so they're much more triggering. It's not to say that I don't do this work with people who don't have autistic kids, but if you do, you know that you have to do this work more than anyone else does. So trying not to be confusing, I need to be a little bit more clear. So we'll put the narcissism over there for a minute, but coming to the families that are dealing with these higher frequency and higher sensitive kids, I've been working with the parents a lot more these days to really help them not just fix the kid, right? And when I say fix, I go like this because people often are like, well, how do we they bring their child to therapy and they say like, okay, can you fix, my child while I'm over here? It's like, no, it's a family job. And those who are dealing with these really extreme situations with children know this better than anyone else, that it's really, really difficult. So I work with those parents now, mostly women, but I have dads that come on board too, which is really, really beautiful and welcomed. And then those that fall under the places where we are licensed, we can also support their children in therapy sometimes. So so there's a couple different ways that I'm working now. I'm also working with women who are awakening and who really want to reclaim themselves, come back into their bodies, come back into their truths, trust their own intuition. So I'm not a very niche person, but those are areas that I seem to really attract from, and I enjoy working, and I have an entire team that jumps in there and supports too.
Well, help supporting family dealing with those challenging situations. I mean, that seems like really noble work. So I think I applaud you for, you say you're not niche, but that sounds like a pretty important niche to be a part of.
Yeah, yeah. Well, and it's what I wrote my book about.
Okay. And your book,
Yeah.
The Art of Chaos. We didn't get into that much because I know it's not out yet, but maybe when it does come out, you can come back on. We could chat about that.
Sure.
In the meantime,
Absolutely.
though, for people that want to learn more or to see if it's a good fit to work with you or find out more of your offerings, where do they go, Nicole?
So I have a website. It's called drnicoledolan.com. I am also on the social media, places. Instagram is probably the one that I go on myself, which is at Dr. Nicole Dolan. And also for anybody that is in California or Nevada that is looking for sliding scale services, I do have a nonprofit collective there in those places. And that website is sacredpathholistictherapy.com.
That sounds great. Well, Nicole, I really enjoyed talking to you today. I'm glad you reached
Yeah.
out. I've enjoyed our conversation. It sounds like you have, it sounds like you're in the right field.
Yeah, thank you. I've enjoyed speaking with you too, and really hearing your story as to, what's also brought you here. So yeah, I've appreciated our conversation.
Well, I like to talk about myself. What can I say?
Yeah.
For the listeners, as always, always grateful for your listening. I hope you enjoyed the episode, and I encourage you to check out more Nicole's work. I hope you all have a great day out there.